Welcome back to the CUBE studio here at the New York Stock Exchange. I'm Gemma Allen, and this is Crypto Trailblazers, part of our programming with NYSE Wired. And joining me today is Constantin Kogan, CEO and founder of Holistic Capital. Welcome, Constantin.
Thank you for having me, John.
So, for our listeners, viewers who might not be familiar, Holistic Capital, I mean, it sounds almost romantic. What exactly do you guys do?
Well, I love how you put it romantic. Yes, we actually do trading, so algorithmic trading. We have multi-strategy, multi-assets trading algorithmic, and mostly we focus on high-frequency trading and basis carry trade. And so far, we're focusing on Bitcoin. That's our primary asset.
Wow, okay. And your own background, you kind of started as somewhat of a psychology leaning space, right? Am I correct? Like, talk to me a little about the journey you've been on. Like, what brought you to this?
Well, I started back in Ukraine when I was born. I was a futures and commodity trader. I was actually selling about 100,000 tons of physical cereal like wheat, corn, barley, like sunflower oil, and from Ukraine. And I really understood fast that we need to hedge our positions, and that's how I started to work Chicago Board of Trade. That was my first venue where I started to trade soybean futures and many other
Wow.
commodities. And then my good friend, 2012, he told me like that you have to buy Bitcoin. So I just blindly bought my five first Bitcoin at BTC. Not many people know it here. It was the biggest exchange between Eastern Europe and China back in the days. That was later seized by FBI, but ironically. And I took out my money 3 months before just by sheer luck, by the way. And that's how my journey started. I was a speculator. I was just like trying to understand what it means, and I was trying to make money. 4 years after, in retrospect, 2016, when Ethereum came out, to me the idea was sounded a little bit crazy. But then I promised myself that if the price goes to $10 and it's going to be like more global adoption, uh, smart contracts, I did understand something that it will change like the entire industry. Meaning like the programmable money that will allow us like to trade 24/7 to and to have better settlement, better clearing, better like faster, better, cheaper. That's what's going to change the industry. And I took a conscious decision in 2016, 10 years, by the way, now
Wow.
it's already 10 years, to go all in. And in 2017, I became a partner in the first cryptocurrency fund of hedge funds, Bitbull Capital. We were the first SEC registered fund of hedge funds in the world. Looked at 1,000 different strategies, mostly liquid.
Wow.
And then I was in Wave Financial, also pretty big fund. We had seven different strategies. We tokenized the first whiskey distillery. We had IRA license, also one of the few firms that had it back in the days. Managed 1.5 billion under like an AUM. Then I had three different startups, and now I came back to the hedge fund world.
Wow. So really, this all began with blind faith and a recommendation from a good pal that has led you down a road. It's kind of hard to believe, really, right? If you think about 2012 to 2026, in terms of what that even means for what we define as a commodity, right? In the world of cryptocurrency and this kind of mad state of affairs we live in now.
Yeah.
From your perspective, you've also done a really good job of building community in the space. Like you've built a very interesting online following. Talk a little bit about that side of it, about the kind of human engagement side of it, also kind of living and your life quite publicly. How did you think and decide to kind of take that track? A lot of people live in the shadows of it in the space.
Well, to be frank, like that came from a lot of pain and depression during COVID.
Wow.
So yes, I COVID was one of the roughest moments for me, like on many levels, on a personal level, just overall. And I was trying to reinvent myself and trying to see what's gonna happen next in my life. And I realized we're all locked down. Like there's not many things are happening, and and I have all those connections of incredible hedge fund managers. So I thought to myself, I might as well just like start doing like Zoom sessions, like and interviews. My first guest was Dan Moorhead, founder of
Wow.
Pantera Capital. That helped a lot, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And I started my, my blog, so to speak, right, in holistic investments. So now it's, in retrospect, I have 650K following across different platforms. I have a distribution network of seven different podcasts, and 100 plus guests, including like, Tim Draper, Anthony Scaramucci, Fabian Falkenstetter, Buterian, and many other like great names, co-founder of LinkedIn, and I would say just the desire to share this information. I didn't have any goal of monetization whatsoever.
Wow.
My goal was just to help others and to educate because I have relationship and I thought I can ask questions in a different way. And in the beginning, I think it was it was a lot of learning experience. My video quality was not great, my sound was not great, so I was learning a lot and taking feedback. Over time, now in retrospect, as you know, I already have a studio here in New York, and a lot of like the quality is very very different. The caliber of guests is also incredible. So I do something which I love, and I love that it can help others to learn something unique. So yeah, that's the short version of it.
Wow. Well, I have to tell you, I also had a terrible pandemic. I lost my mother and found the
Sorry to
experience
hear that.
incredibly lonely as well. So it's so interesting that you turned it into something, though, so productive, right? Like I spent most of my time just crying in my bedroom. So I envy you somewhat that you
I
turned the lemons into lemonade.
I did a lot of that too, by the way. Like, it was a lot of crying and a lot of depression. But I realized, look, at some point you need to convert this pain into something productive because otherwise, I feel like it's taking away the opportunity to help others. Because what I'm doing a lot of psychotherapy, to be honest. Like, and I realized that like when you're just like focused only on your own pain, like, and it's also it might become like a little bit selfish. Like, it's like you are absorbing like you're like everything inside of you, like, and it's like nuclear reaction. If you don't have like this fusion that is coming out, like, you're not sharing the energy, it can explode, right?
Wow.
And it came not from like that because I'm so great and I persevere. No, it came from the need to give to others
Yeah.
because I realized that's my survival technique. It was not because like anything else, to be honest. Like, I realized that if I'm not gonna start giving, I'm gonna blow up.
Well, speaking of pain, I want to talk to you about something we don't talk about all too often on Crypto Trailblazers, but a very important topic, I think, which is the decision to have opinion about things publicly, right? You said you're Ukrainian. I know we've spoken before about your family's situation. There's a lot happening in the world in 2026 in terms of wars and impacts and all of the kind of frightening things that we seem quite protected from here in New York, where we live in this bubble, right? It's also, I think, a dangerous time to speak publicly about topics, to have an opinion, especially when you're building an audience. How do you think about that?
I think if you have a moral compass, it's never a bad time to speak openly about things that you truly believe in, right? If you clearly defined what is, I wouldn't say what is right or wrong, but where your soul is and what is like correct, like, what is like evil, like, then at least you can talk about it. I think it's also important to be fully educated in this, not to spread more disinformation. That's the biggest fear. I mean, in Ukraine, it's very straightforward, right? Ukraine was like, and still is like a super peaceful nation, never attacked anyone. There's no like real precedent to even like start this war. Now 25% of the territory is captured. Hundreds of thousands of people died for nothing. You know the irony that like all wars end in two things: negotiation and peace. And in between, there's a lot of young men who are dying for nothing. So it's very sad that the ego of the modern kind of era is so elevated that the what I call warlords, the people who are actually giving these orders, are just afraid to lose power. I mean, if we're gonna be completely honest, so that's the only reason why they continue this war. The war could have ended, and by the way, could end now in 2 days. By the way, all the generals, all the people in charge, they know about it. There is no will to end this war because in between the chaos you can also like basically cover up a lot of things that are not great in your country.
For sure.
Like, it's one thing if you have a great example of the culture of civilized society and you go and you try to educate others, you try to help others, like let's say societies that are not that great and they're oppressing like others. But in Ukraine there was no need for that at all.
Yeah.
So the most painful part that now we accepted it as a norm. And
It's
that's
the power of distraction, right,
Yes.
too, which we see here in the US as well in many parts of societal life. So Let's talk about a topic that I find too is interesting and quite jarring, especially as a European, right? We often talk about the impact of war. We're here at the center of capital markets, and that is a priority for a lot of people in terms of how they think about energy prices, how they think about the impacts on the bottom lines of society. From a crypto perspective, these this mad state of 2026 has also emerged at a time where we've had the rise of AI, the rise of information, mass information, and social media. And it's also the new frontier of like blockchain, right? And cryptocurrencies and how they can help people globally. What are your thoughts in terms of how this industry meets the kind of geopolitical space that we're in?
Look, I think what we're seeing right now, it's every war has also economic incentives there. Like, and very clearly, if you know, let's imagine you know when the war will take place, right? When you will attack. Now you can speculate on this because you understand. Let's say we've seen this very clear with oil prices.
Yeah.
How many people in Polymarket and Kalshi and other places were made millions, if not hundreds of millions, when they get to know this information in between. And now predictive analytics, they with AI, actually, they can help you to. You don't need to know exactly which day, but with a lot of confidence, like you can even if you know at least like few days ahead of time what's gonna happen, and you understand that the war and the Strait of Hormuz, like with Iran, right, will be blocked. We're one of the like 25% of oil trades coming from this region. I think that obviously people knew that it's gonna impact the price. So then you can obviously make a lot of money based just on this information. So how sad it is, right? People are always making money on this news, like famous New York Stock Exchange rule that buy the rumors, sell the fact. And I would say that as long as you understand the geopolitical situation in the world, you can use it at least to like make more money and then send it to maybe charities. I don't know. I would hope that like that people who are making those money on the predictions, that at least they will help others. I'm not sure that's the
I
case.
don't know, but you would
Yeah,
hope so.
yes, but yes, I do believe that like there's a lot of speculation happening, and the leaders of the countries are sadly acting more like big influencers, less as people who actually care about the humanity and the society, which is very, very ironic and sad. But at the same time, I would say that like whatever is happening with the stock market, right now it bounced back. We've seen very clearly like now S&P 500 on like one of the all-time high, right? And for Bitcoin specifically, by the way, we are getting into a very new era. The Q1, I was reading this analytics that most of the people who sold was retail, by the way. About 62,000 bitcoins were sold by retail, which is in the opposite that most of the traditional companies, like governments and then ETFs and other hedge funds, they acquired Bitcoin.
Wow.
So institutional capital sees Bitcoin as a very long-term instrument and tool, while retail is prone to panic. Therefore, they are liquidating it as one of the kind of like assets that is a little bit more scary and less kind of understood for them. I mean, it's to be fair, it's an alternative asset class, right? So for a lot of folks who are don't believe in the 10-year horizon, 100-year horizon, they would liquidate it much faster than even a stock, right? But for institutions, it's actually changing. It's the opposite. So it's a very interesting cycle. We've never seen this before.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually know a lot of people who, like, even in my personal life, that sell it quite quickly, right? Like, it just tends to be, like you say, the rhythm to this kind of part of financial markets, like from a retail perspective, for sure. Okay, broadly speaking, the crypto industry, though, has had somewhat of a reimagination, right? Especially in the public narrative. That is undoubted. There are, though, like you mentioned, folks that think, is this a 5-year thing? Is this a 2 more year thing? Is this a 10-year thing? Does this really have longevity? In the meantime, institutional investors are going all in a lot of ways, right? We see the infrastructure that's being built at an institutional level. It's largely impressive. The skeptics still live, though, right? And they still have voice. What are your thoughts?
Well, considering like if you understand the deflationary structure of Bitcoin, and you understand that there's already 20 million Bitcoin was already minted out of 21 million. And you understand that the complexity, also the technical side of it, that the halving will soon, gonna change, meaning that the rewards are gonna be less, right? So I think based on that, let alone like the demand will only grow. It's actually the opposite of any inflationary currency that we see. I mean, dollar, people don't talk about it. Dollar lost a lot of its value. It's not felt, it's not seen, but if you can actually, like, if you analyze just the basic purchasing power of dollar, not even like, we didn't even have to talk about 30 years ago. Let's talk about like the past 5 to 6 years. It lost a tremendous amount of like purchasing power. The Bitcoin as a long-term holding asset is actually given more like adoption and given more like acceptance, especially from the bigger institution. Like when you have BlackRocks of the world, like State Streets of the world, like more like Morgan Stanley's of the world, they're launching their ETFs. They're launching like a lot of like structured products, and they on their balance sheets they hold it and they think about 10-year horizon. You understand that like it's only gonna grow.
For sure.
So and because there's less Bitcoin in circulation, and by the way, as a reminder to your viewers, 4 million allegedly are lost forever.
Wow.
So that we can assume there's only 60 million in circulation. 1 million, let's say, is in Satoshi's hands, right? And then so it's like not a lot, like that's not a lot of circulating supply, like just to even purchase it from.
Yeah.
So people predict from various firms that it can go to even 1 million. Therefore, I would recommend people to kind of be, I would say, still conservative about it and not deploy more than 5 to 10% to begin with. Because I'm not a great example. For me, like I have 80 to 90% in crypto.
You're all in.
Yeah, I'm all in because I understand what
Yeah.
I'm doing. I understand my
Yeah.
risk. For people who are only starting, I would recommend to be going into 5 to 10%, learn more about it. And if you're not okay, if you don't like the complexity of, let's say, opening a crypto exchange account, or let's say even getting your own wallet, by now you have ETFs.
Yeah, for sure. It's great. Well, listen, Constantine, I know we're up on time, but I'm going to finish with that one line. It's only going to grow. Let's leave it for Crypto Trailblazers there today. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Gemma Allen. This is the CUBE studio at the New York Stock Exchange, and we are Crypto Trailblazers, part of our program with NYSE Wired. Thanks for watching.